You mean nothing to me." The words were spoken quietly, almost casually, as if the Duke were commenting on the weather, which somehow made them worse. Duchess Eleanor Ashcombe stood motionless beside the ballroom doors. The orchestra continued playing. Guests continued laughing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Nobody else seemed to notice the moment her world shifted. Only she did, and perhaps the Duke himself, though Damien Ashcombe would spend months pretending otherwise. The remark had not been intended for her. That was the problem. People reveal their true thoughts when they believe the wrong person cannot hear them. Earlier that evening, a group of noblemen gathered near the terrace discussing marriage. One gentleman jokingly asked Damien, "Surely 6 years of marriage must inspire some affection?" Laughter followed. Then Damien shrugged. "Affection?" He sipped his wine. "You're assuming there was ever much to begin with." Another man frowned. "You don't mean that." Damien smiled. Coldly. "I do. Eleanor and I understand each other perfectly." "What does that mean?" "It means she expects nothing, and I owe nothing." Then came the sentence, the one Eleanor heard from the shadows beyond the doorway. "You mean nothing to me." Silence followed. Not because anyone agreed, because even the other men looked uncomfortable. Damien laughed, attempting to lighten the moment. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. Eleanor quietly walked away. No tears, no scene, no confrontation, just silence. The same silence she had carried for years. 6 years earlier, their marriage had looked ideal. Damien inherited one of the largest duchies in the kingdom. Eleanor came from a respected aristocratic family. Beautiful, educated, graceful, kind. Everyone expected a successful union. Nobody realized it began with a misunderstanding. Damien had loved someone else. Not dramatically, not tragically. A young woman he'd admired before duty intervened. The relationship never progressed, never became serious, never truly became anything. But the memory remained. Then his father died unexpectedly. Responsibility arrived. The duchy required stability. Marriage became necessary. Eleanor was chosen, not because Damien disliked her, because she made sense. And sensible decisions rarely create romantic stories. The wedding happened. Life continued. Years passed. Damien fulfilled his duties. Eleanor fulfilled hers. Everything appeared successful. From the outside. Inside, something essential never formed. Not hatred, not cruelty, distance. 1,000 tiny moments where connection could have happened, and didn't. Eleanor tried. At first, she invited conversation, suggested walks, shared books she loved, asked questions about his dreams, his concerns, his hopes. Most received polite answers, never real ones. Eventually, she stopped asking. The strange thing was, Eleanor never became bitter. Instead, she became useful, remarkably useful. The Ashcombe Duchy contained dozens of struggling communities. Schools needed funding, roads needed repairs, medical clinics needed supplies, widows needed support, orphanages needed structure. While Damien focused on politics, Eleanor focused on people. One project became free. Free became 10. 10 became an entire network. Within 5 years, the Ashcombe Community Foundation had transformed huge portions of the duchy. Literacy increased. Employment improved. Infant mortality dropped. Rural economies strengthened. Entire villages flourished. Newspapers frequently praised the initiative. Government officials studied it. Neighboring regions copied it. Whenever people congratulated Damien, he accepted politely. "Your wife has accomplished extraordinary things." He would smile. "Yes. She enjoys charitable work." Nothing more. He never asked how. Never asked why. Never asked what it cost her. Emotionally. Personally. Spiritually. Because that would require seeing her. Not simply acknowledging her existence. Old Mrs. Whitlock, the estate housekeeper, noticed years earlier. One afternoon, she found Eleanor reviewing funding reports. "Does it ever bother you?" Eleanor looked up. "What?" "The way His Grace overlooks everything you do." A sad smile appeared. "He doesn't overlook it." Mrs. Whitlock frowned. "No." Eleanor lowered her eyes. "He simply never looks." The distinction broke the housekeeper's heart. Meanwhile, life continued, or appeared to, until the ball, until the sentence, until something inside Eleanor finally became tired. Not angry, tired. The most dangerous kind of ending. Because anger still hopes. Exhaustion doesn't. That night, Eleanor returned to her rooms. She sat quietly beside the window. Moonlight illuminated the gardens below. For several hours, she simply thought. About 6 years. About conversations never finished. About dreams never shared. About a marriage that existed mostly on paper. And eventually, about freedom. The idea arrived gently. Not as rebellion. As possibility. For the first time, the thought felt peaceful. The following morning, a letter arrived. One she had almost forgotten. The Royal Institute for Civic Development. An organization she secretly advised for years. 3 separate times they had invited her to lead national programs. 3 separate times she declined. Because of duty. Because of marriage. Because she believed things might change. This time, the offer remained open. Director of National Community Development. Permanent position. Permanent residence in the capital. Permanent independence. Eleanor stared at the letter, then laughed softly. Not because it was amusing. Because fate occasionally possesses a strange sense of timing. 3 days later, she accepted. No announcement. No drama. Only a signature. And a decision. Meanwhile, Damien remained completely unaware. Life continued normally. Or so he believed. Weeks passed. Preparations quietly unfolded. Projects transferred. Responsibilities delegated. Accounts organized. Letters written. Everything arranged with typical Eleanor efficiency. Nobody noticed. Except Mrs. Whitlock. One evening, the housekeeper entered Eleanor's office. "You've decided." It wasn't a question. Eleanor nodded. "Yes." "When?" "Soon." Mrs. Whitlock's eyes filled with tears. "Will you tell him?" A long silence followed. Then Eleanor answered honestly. "I spent 6 years trying to be heard." She closed another folder. "I think I'm finished speaking." The housekeeper quietly cried. Because she understood. More than anyone. 2 weeks later, Damien returned from a political conference. The manor seemed unchanged. Servants greeted him. Dinner waited. Everything appeared normal. Until he entered the dining room. Only one place had been set. He frowned. "Where is the Duchess?" Silence. Several servants exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Whitlock finally stepped forward. "Her Grace left this morning." Damien blinked. "For where?" The housekeeper handed him a sealed envelope. His name appeared across the front. Suddenly, for reasons he couldn't explain, his stomach tightened. The letter felt heavier than paper should, and as he slowly broke the seal, he had no idea that within 3 months, he would search half the kingdom trying to find the woman he once claimed meant nothing at all. The letter felt heavier than paper should. Damien broke the seal, then read. Once, twice, 3 times. Because his mind refused to accept what his eyes already understood. The letter was short. Typically Eleanor. No accusations. No bitterness. No dramatic farewell. "Damien, for years, I believed our marriage needed patience. Then I realized it needed 2 people. I don't hate you. That would require energy I no longer possess. You once said I meant nothing to you. I finally accepted that you meant exactly what you said. The strange thing is, once I accepted it, I stopped being sad. I wish you happiness. Eleanor." That was all. No forwarding address. No explanation. No request. No hope. Just an ending. For the first time in years, Damien felt afraid. Not because she left. Because she sounded peaceful. People who leave angrily sometimes return. People who leave peacefully rarely do. The next morning he expected a second letter. Then another. Then some practical matter requiring discussion. Nothing arrived. Days became weeks. Weeks became a month. The manner changed. At first. Only in small ways. Fresh flowers disappeared. Music vanished from evening gatherings. The servants smiled less. Dinner became unbearably quiet. Then larger changes emerged. Village leaders no longer visited the manor. School directors stopped sending invitations. Community reports arrived addressed to the Royal Institute instead. Programs continued functioning. Smoothly. Efficiently. As if Eleanor had prepared for every possibility, including never returning. One evening, Damien entered her old office. For 6 years, he'd rarely stepped inside. Now, he couldn't stop looking. Shelves lined the walls. Maps. Project plans. Letters. Reports. Thousands of pages documenting work he barely understood. A leather journal sat alone upon the desk. Curious, he opened it. The first page contained a simple list. Things worth saving. Village schools. Widow support funds. Children's libraries. Medical outreach. Teacher scholarships. Page after page followed. Not political ambitions. Not noble achievements. People. Always people. Damien continued reading. Gradually, the entries became more personal. Damien looked tired today. I wish he'd tell me what's worrying him. Another. He seemed happy during dinner. Another. Perhaps next year will be easier. Then later. I don't think he sees me anymore. Later still. Today I stopped hoping he would ask how my day was. And finally, months before she left. Strangely, the hurt is fading. Damien stared at the sentence. Not because it sounded sad. Because it sounded final. The pain had ended long before the marriage did. 3 months after Eleanor's departure, Damien began searching. Not officially. Official searches create rumors. Instead, he traveled quietly. Village by village. Town by town. School by school. Everywhere Eleanor once worked. At first, people welcomed him warmly. Then they asked the same question. You're looking for her now? The question appeared harmless. Yet somehow, it always felt like criticism. Because it was. In Whitebridge, an elderly teacher smiled sadly. She used to speak about you constantly. Damien looked surprised. She did. The woman nodded. Every visit. What did she say? The teacher laughed softly. Mostly excuses. His stomach tightened. Excuses? Why you couldn't attend. Why you were busy. Why you missed events. Another pause. She protected your reputation far more than you deserved. Damien had no response. Because it was true. Another village. Another story. Another wound. A young doctor told him. The Duchess personally funded my education. Another. A schoolmaster said. She remembered every child's birthday. Another. A widow quietly whispered. She saved my family. Everywhere. The stories continued. And every story revealed the same thing. Everyone knew Eleanor. Yet Damien never truly had. One rainy afternoon, his search brought him to a small coastal town. The mayor recognized him immediately. After polite conversation, the elderly man asked a curious question. Do you know why she loved the sea? Damien frowned. I didn't know she did. The mayor looked genuinely surprised. Then sad. She came here every year. Every year. Without fail. The man pointed toward the shoreline. She'd sit there for hours. Damien stared toward the ocean. He'd been married 6 years, and never knew his wife loved the sea. The realization hurt more than anything so far. Not because she kept secrets. Because he never asked enough questions to discover them. Months passed. Then one morning, a breakthrough finally arrived. Queen Adelaide requested a private audience. Damien traveled immediately. The Queen greeted him warmly, then studied him carefully. You've lost weight. Damien smiled weakly. I've gained perspective. The Queen laughed. Those usually arrive together. Silence followed. Then she asked, why are you searching for her? Damien answered honestly. Because I was wrong. The Queen raised an eyebrow. That isn't enough. Another pause. Finally, he found the truth. Because for the first time, I understand what I lost. The Queen nodded slowly. Satisfied. Then handed him a document. The Royal Institute for Civic Development. Director, Duchess Eleanor Ashcombe. His breath caught. She's here. No. The Queen smiled. She's where she belongs. A week later, Damien arrived at the Institute's central campus. The place was extraordinary. Schools, libraries, medical centers, training programs, research facilities. Thousands of people worked there. Thousands more benefited from its programs. And at the center of everything was Eleanor. He spotted her in a garden courtyard, speaking with teachers, laughing, actually laughing. The sound startled him, because he couldn't remember hearing it in years. She looked different, not physically, lighter, as though a weight had finally disappeared. She noticed him. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then she smiled politely. Damien. Eleanor. Silence followed. Not awkward. Simply honest. Finally, he spoke. I've been searching for you. I know. You knew? She nodded. People talk. Another pause. Why didn't you contact me? Eleanor considered. Then answered. Because you weren't looking for me. The answer confused him. Of course I was. She gently shook her head. No. You were looking for the woman you ignored. His chest tightened. And now, for several seconds, neither spoke. Then Damien answered honestly. Now I'm looking for the woman I never bothered to know. For the first time, emotion flickered across her face. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something. Hope perhaps. Or curiosity. The beginning of something. Not reconciliation. Not immediately. Something more realistic. A conversation. The first real conversation of their marriage. And as they walked through the gardens together, Damien realized something important. He hadn't searched half the kingdom because he loved the woman he married.